Good morning, students, and welcome to video 1 of our distance learning. I hope that you guys are doing well this week. I hope that you're home. I hope that you're healthy, and I hope you're not going too stir crazy. So those above us have decided that we need to stay home a little bit longer, and GJH has decided that with that, we are going to start posting videos for you along with our lessons. I want to touch on how we've been doing our assignments so far. I have been putting your assignments in something called a Google form, which is very much like a test. We haven't used these this year because we always use Edulastic for our tests. And some of you have had some connectivity issues. Things time out, you think it's deleting your work. I know that you're aggravated and frustrated with this. I am too. So we're changing things this week. As a matter of fact, we're changing things for the next 3 weeks. You're gonna be working exclusively out of ReadWorks. And we're even gonna go a little bit beyond our curriculum. Before I get too deep into what we're actually learning this week, I wanna touch on how you can get this work done at home. Most of you do not have internet access at home. Anything that I do with the internet has to be hotspotted off of my cell phone. Some of you have that capability. Some of you don't. But most of you do have a cell phone. So let me first start with how we can do this digitally. On your phones, if you don't already have it, you're going to need an app. Google Classroom. When you get the app, you sign in just like you're signing into your Chromebook. So the same username, the same password as you would use for your Chromebook. So it's super easy to get signed in. Once you get signed in, you can look at the notification settings and change them so that you can get a notification every time I update the stream. As a matter of fact, anytime any of your teachers update the stream, it can notify, whatever. The point is, you need the app and you need to be checking for updates every day from all of your teachers. I'm going to be checking in with you guys on questions and assignments, anything you may post to Google Classroom twice a day. I'll be checking in at noon and I'll also check in at 4. Now, with the videos, I want you to understand that I am not Mr. Hemler, the bald guy with the beard, our favorite history video guy. He has been doing this for a really long time and he's really, really good at it. The guy who compared President James Monroe to a dog with a full bladder, that dog then peeing on the Western Hemisphere, looking at Europe and saying,
"Hey, this here tree's mine. Come at me. Oh, I wish you would."
Mr. Hemler, I'm going to do the best that I can with these videos, and I have been working on my video editing capabilities, but please don't expect too much from me. Let's start this week by wrapping up the Civil War. As you guys already know, the North wins the war. When we first started to see the pull against the North and the South, when they were pulling away from each other, they had so many differences. Remember, this was called sectionalism. And one of the big reasons that they were sectionalized was because the North industrialized. They were very much about factories and inventions, remember, textiles, and the South was still agricultural. They were still planting and harvesting, all about that cotton production. So they were diametrically opposed. They didn't get along because the way that they lived life was very different. After the war, economically, things were still very different. The North continued to have this booming economy because they had industrialized. The South, however, was devastated. They were broke as a joke, completely in debt, and now that the slaves had been freed, they lost their way of life and their way of making money. So economically, the South was broken. That's how we leave off the Civil War. The first article that you're going to read this week is called A Monument for Peace. Now I'm just going to give you a slight background on what you're going to be reading. Even after the war, the states still very much had this idea of sectionalism. They were the United Divided States. I don't know if you remember, under the Articles of Confederation, that was the very first type of government before the Constitution. We were called the Divided States of America. And it was kind of like that even after the Civil War. There were monuments made for the Union, there were monuments made for the Confederacy. The article you're going to read today is about one person and how they felt it was important to have a monument made for the entire country to memorialize everything that we'd been through. After the Civil War, our nation entered a time called Reconstruction. Americans were literally trying to reconstruct the nation, the economy, relationships between the states. Everything had to be rebuilt from the bottom up. Part of this rebuilding was allowing and integrating African Americans into a free life, holding jobs, owning property, and yes, the ability to vote. We're going to jump around in history just a little bit this week. So you're going to read about the monument, but then we're going to fast forward to the Civil Rights Movement. Now, the Civil Rights Movement was all about getting rights for African Americans in America. You're going to take a look at two different authors in this reading, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Jackie Robinson. Dr. King was a civil rights leader, and he was a peaceful protester. The text you're going to read from him was actually a letter that he wrote from the Birmingham City Jail. He had been arrested for a sit-in demonstration. A sit-in is basically where you sit and you refuse to be moved until people hear what you have to say. Jackie Robinson was a famous baseball player. Now, what I want you to pay attention to while you're reading these two texts is how these two authors view civil rights differently. How do they view what we needed to do as citizens to bring civil rights for African Americans about? Then we're going to flash back in time, back to the women's rights movement. Now remember that we looked at the women's rights movement just a little bit. Seneca Falls, the Declaration of Sentiments. We looked at all of these texts that these women were saying they needed to have the same rights as men. You're going to be looking at the fact that suffrage, or the right to vote, was passed by Congress. There were several amendments that had to do with this, and I want you to pay special attention to the different amendments. Remember, an amendment is a change to the Constitution. Amendment literally means to change. I want to remind you of ratification. We've talked about this word before, and we've been talking about this word since Unit 2. Think about it for a second. Do you remember what ratification means? Ratification means to pass or to approve, usually with an act or a law. Got it? Got it? Got it? Got it? Got it? And that's what we're going to be taking a look at this week. You're going to be reading A Monument for Peace on Monday. Tuesday, you're going to read those two texts from the civil rights leaders, Jackie Robinson and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Wednesday, you're going to be answering a couple of POD questions for me. So just like any other POD I've ever posted, it's going to be in the POD section. It's going to say POD. And it'll probably be 3, maybe 4 questions. And all you have to do is respond to them. Please remember that I want you to respond in complete sentences. And if I post 3 or 4 questions, I need you to answer all of the questions that I post. Thursday, we're going to be looking at the women's rights movement and how suffrage passed in Congress. And Friday, we're going to wrap up with a forum question. Now, some of you have participated in my forum questions already. I'll give you more information on that later in the week. That's all I have for today. I will come back to you with another video at the end of the week to sum up what we've learned this week and to prepare you for the forum question on Friday. But one more thing, I want to tell you guys how much I miss you. I miss you desperately. I know that this might feel like a break to some of you, but I know you gotta be getting stir crazy. You're not really able to go anywhere or do anything, and I miss you, miss you, miss you. Please know all of your teachers, your administrators, everybody at Grant Junior High, we're working as hard as we can to make learning possible and interesting while you're away from us. Never forget how much I love you, and I hope that I get to see you again really soon. So we'll talk later this week. I hope you've enjoyed my video. Bye. The North continued to have this booming and now that the slaves had been freed, and now that one of the primary that's not correct. Now I remember, and the last word that I want